then what happened was I was at a conference and I started getting swelling in my one finger. And it was kind of like a sausage finger. And I started thinking, uh-oh, is this infected? Of course, the ER doctor mind of mine is like running through it. Is this infected? Like, what have I done? Is it warm? Is it red? There's no trauma to it that I know of. And it wasn't too painful, but it was really swollen. And that was unique. I didn't know what was happening. But it went away in a couple days. So I hadn't yet made an appointment to see a doctor. It kind of went away. Went back to work, was working a series of shifts in a row, and then I had it in another finger on this hand. And then I was like, oh, this is autoimmune.
Welcome to the Habit Healers Podcast, where small habits create big transformations. I'm Dr. Lori Marbus, and here we explore the science and the stories behind lasting change. Through real life experiences, expert insights, and practical strategies, we uncover the habits that heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. So if you're ready to break free from frustration and build a life of health and vitality, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's get started. But right before we do, I'd love to say thank you to our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by Fit Vegan Coaching, the world's leading whole food, plant-based body recomposition program for Gen X and baby boomers. Founded by Maxime, whose personal journey began after losing his ex-fiancée to breast cancer, Fit Vegan Coaching is on a mission to disease-proof the world through the transformative power of plant-based eating and fitness. This program is the Rolls-Royce of plant-based coaching, offering all-inclusive services, personalized plans, world-class accountability, lifelong support, and more. Say goodbye to the yo-yo dieting and embrace a lasting transformation that will rev up your metabolism even post-transformation. Ready to take charge of your health and vitality? Head over to fitvegan.ca, that's fitvegan.ca, and mention Dr. Lori for exclusive bonus savings when you sign up. Don't miss this opportunity to join the movement towards a healthier, fitter, and more vibrant you. This episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by The Healing Kitchen, your path to vibrant health. Immerse yourself in the transformative program, guided by the combined expertise of myself, Dr. Lori Marbus, and Chef Brittany Giroudi, who has lost 70 pounds on a whole food plant-based diet. Here's what's in store for you. Virtual weekly sessions. Engage in an immersive 60-minute virtual session every single week, where you'll delve into the world of wholesome plant-based goodness right from your own kitchen. Cooking with Brittany the first half hour. Unleash your inner chef as you're captivated by Chef Brittany Giroudi's culinary mastery that will delight your taste buds and nourish your body. Medical Q&A with Dr. Lori the last half hour. Prioritize your well-being during the second half hour. I will personally address your medical inquiries, providing evidence-based insights and personalized advice, empowering you to make informed choices for your health. So join us on the Healing Kitchen to help you step into a healthier and most vibrant future. Welcome to the Habit Healers Podcast, and I can't think of a better person to be the person that we talk about a healing story than with my dear friend, Dr. Chris Miller. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Chris and I did, I used to have my old podcast, and Chris was my first interview then. That was 9 years ago. And wow, what an almost a decade later can be. So I can't wait to share your story. And before we get to this point where we talk about your lupus journey and your healing journey, can you just kind of take us back to the crazy Chris stories that, beforehand, a little bit of, what you were doing in medicine and what your life was like?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here and share my story with you and everybody. So my story was I had trained in emergency medicine. So I was working in the ER. I had graduated my residency, which I did in Denver, and had moved to the mountains. I was living in Aspen and working in the ER in Aspen. And then I was also working a couple moonlighting shifts in some of the clinics and a few other places, and also in Denver. And, it was Aspen. I just moved to the mountains. I'm from Chicago. So it was pretty exciting. Life was fun, actually. So I was skiing and hiking and playing and living large and then working my shifts. And then in between shifts, I was playing and really enjoying the outdoors. And I mean, I was living my best life. There's no question. I was pretty happy. And then I met my future husband, Troy, and we were having fun. So, but of course, I was burning the candle at both on both ends. So I was working, and instead of going home and resting and taking care of myself, I was trying to do fun stuff and get outdoors and play and be a part of all these wonderful things. And so um, that was definitely a pitfall for me, that I didn't balance my life. But that's what I was doing. And that's when things started. So, yeah. And I was in my 30s at that point.
So can you tell us a little bit about what was that kind of that moment where you kind of felt that deeper, like something is off? Like what was going on then?
Yeah, so what was going on then is I was working at a couple different places in the ER, and I was feeling a little bit stressed with some of the night shifts. So I think that I had a little more stress around that time. But otherwise, things were great. I was, running for office in Colorado ASAP, Emergency Physician Group, American College of Emergency Physicians. So those things were all going great. But then what happened was I was at a conference and I started getting swelling in my one finger. And it was kind of like a sausage finger. And I started thinking, oh, is this infected? Of course, the ER doctor mind of mine is like running through it. Is this infected? Like, what have I done? Is it warm? Is it red? There's no trauma to it that I know of. And it wasn't too painful, but it was really swollen. And that was unique. I didn't know what was happening, but it went away in a couple days. So I hadn't yet made an appointment to see a doctor. It kind of went away. Went back to work, was working a series of shifts in a row, and then I had it in another finger on this hand. And then I was like, oh, this is autoimmune, because that's what autoimmune does. It jumps different joints. And so I started thinking, that's really weird. What is going on? Like, I don't have any illnesses. And so after then it started getting stiff, like it started getting really painful, and it started spreading to my whole hand, where
Mm.
I could barely move my hand. It was really stiff. And I was again working in the ER. I had to do procedures and take care of patients. So I got through those shifts, but it was really tough for me. And then I made an appointment to see a doctor. And when I did, all my labs came back positive, which is unique because often autoimmune labs are not positive at the beginning, but like everything lit up. It's very abnormal. And I was like, never knew all that was happening inside of me. So,
So I'm curious, if we step back a little bit and you were noticing these changes, how long of a time did you wait to make that first appointment? And was there anything that kind of kept you from making that initial appointment? What was
um, so mine, I would have waited longer, but I was having a lot of pain and stiffness, and it was kind of progressing. So I did not wait long. Actually, it was probably only about a week and a half. It was quick. It went to one finger, then that went away, then it gained this hand, and then it was in other fingers, and I was like, whoa. And
Mm,
I was like, I can't move my hand, and I need to work. So
okay.
I actually got in quickly, but otherwise I would have put it off. I mean, for sure.
So can you tell us a little bit? So the doc's telling you, hey, you're a doctor. You obviously understand all this language. Can you tell us like what went through Chris's heart and mind when you were told this and it was just kind of confirmation of your
Yeah.
initial thoughts?
Well, I was thinking something like rheumatoid arthritis or something a little bit different. But when I heard lupus, I had fear, because as an emergency room doctor, we know all the bad complications of a lupus person. A lot of organs are involved and a lot of complications. And so when I got that diagnosis, I was heartbroken. I was scared. I was afraid. I was like, no, not that one. Like that's the one thing I would not want it to be. So it was pretty bad for me. It was pretty devastating.
Wow. So what was your next step in your journey? Like what was the first thing that Chris did?
Well, not a lot, like outside of what the doctor told me to do. We made an appointment with rheumatology. I had to drive 4 hours away because I was the nearest rheumatologist in Denver, and got put on meds. So,
Okay.
so
Can
I
you tell us a
started.
little bit about that journey? Like, hey, you're getting this prescription and you're traditionally medicine trained, right? So was it just like, oh, this is what I have to do? Like, what was going in your mind here when you're given this medication?
Yeah, I remember asking him early on, like, will I be on this for the rest of my life? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, well, some people are able to get off, but most people need it for the rest of their life. And he kind of left it at that. And I thought, all right, well, at least maybe this will help me because I was having pain. I was just scared. I was having pain. It was like progressing. And so I just wanted something to make me better. So I went on two medications right away at the beginning and I wasn't better. So then they added a third and I just kept not doing great. So I struggled on those medications. So they kept trying to find more medications and I kept having just really bad symptoms. It kept progressing. It changed to different parts of my body. It was spreading and I had to go on steroids and pretty high doses, which made me balloon up a little bit, and I got puffy, and I didn't feel good about myself then, and so it was rough.
So what was that final moment when you're like, "Man, this is just not it. I need to go start searching."
Well, it was getting really hard in the ER. I was working and seeing patients, and I remember like a night shift, and I was seeing this young girl, like in her 20s, and she was having abdominal pain. And I was pressing her belly and looking at her previous records and looking at her, like her vitals were normal. And she wasn't really tender, but she was there. And I was like, I was having so much pain and inflammation all throughout my body. Like it was her. I was like so stiff on my shift. And I thought, I'm sicker than her, and I'm the doctor. Like, and
Mm.
it just felt like I got to step away from this. And that was so heartbreaking for me to step away from emergency medicine. I did not want to do that. Like that was probably the worst thing of all. But yeah, so that was a aha moment. And then shortly after that, when I saw my rheumatologist again, I was like, I am not getting better. I'm having more problems. I can't get through my shifts. And he was like, well, there's some experimental drugs. Let's put you on some of those. And that's when I was scared and I was like, okay, what else can I do? And so I started Googling at that point. And this is like back in 2008. So it was before everybody was online because now everybody's online telling you their story of reversals or how they improved or right. It's everywhere. But back then nobody said anything to me and nobody really knew. And I certainly didn't know either. So that's when I started reading about it.
Mm. So what did you find when you started searching?
Yeah, I came up with people like Dr. Furman, Dr. Clapper, some of the lifestyle medicine folks. And so immediately when I saw there was hope, I was like, what? And so I actually signed up for a weekend with Dr. Furman. And then I started reading the China study from Dr. Campbell, and I started jumping to Dr. Esselstyn's. I mean, I just went boom, 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 diving into this. Like, what? How could I not have known? I mean, like so many of us, when we learn about it, and I immediately switched. I mean, it wasn't like I didn't need habits for that because it was either keep getting sick and need medications and lose my livelihood or switch my diet. And I was like, okay, that's not too hard of a decision.
Yeah, is like immediately pulling you out of the pain because what you were doing was not working and being in position you understood the complications and all the things that were coming. So the fear pushed you into the unknown. You found, the beginning. So tell us a little bit about your plant-based journey. What were your expectations and were there any problems with that?
Well, so I think you worded it so well there, Lori. Were there any expectations? That's the part I'm still kind of mad about. Not mad, but I'm still like, because so many people are like, if you eat this way, everything it reverses. And that wasn't my story. And so then I thought, well, it's me. I'm not doing it good enough. I got to go harder. So I took it on myself. If the diet doesn't work, it's my fault, not maybe this isn't something's off, right? With something else is not quite right. So, but I went plant-based. I was super excited. I learned recipes. I enjoyed the food. It wasn't hard for me at all to eat all the vegetables and dove into cooking different things and trying different recipes. And I tried to do more for autoimmune, including more raw, fresh fruits and vegetables. Um, but yeah, so that was my initial, and I lost some of that weight I'd gained from being on prednisone. So that was awesome. Felt good about that. But I still had joint pains. That it didn't get better. Like that part did not really reverse for me the way I had expected it to. But I think it's just what you said. If I hadn't had that expectation, I would have been so pleased with it. But I had the expectation of like, oh my God, I'm going to reverse this, and that wasn't exactly my story. But I knew there's so much data to a plant-based diet. As you read about it, there's so much evidence that eating this way is so beneficial. So I felt good that I had learned a new way to eat, at least I wasn't eating all that other stuff I was eating. So I knew that I was doing something good for myself, at least for the rest of my body, even though I still had joint pains, that it was still a good thing for me.
Can you highlight some of the other things that were also affected? Like the lupus knot was just not just your joints. What else was going on?
Well, my sleep was affected for sure. Depression, I had never been depressed person before, and all of a sudden I was withdrawing and this is back when I was first getting on Facebook at that time, and I'd see all my friends on these trips and having fun, and here I was like not feeling well. It was so hard for me at that time. So that became an issue that I would never had experienced before, and which is common in autoimmune people. Now we know that that happens, and it has a lot to do with leaky gut, leaky brain. So it's not just in your head that you're depressed, but it really is a thing. Um, but I didn't know that then. But that was going on, and then when you're on these medications, your cholesterol goes up, your blood pressure goes up, so you start having these other issues. So yeah, I had all these health issues to deal with.
So you're dealing with the lupus, number one. It pulls you out of this crazy lifestyle. We're burning both ends. So you had to walk away from a career that you loved and enjoyed. Now you're dealing with all the pains and stuff. You're like, ah, but I found this is the piece, the treasure I was looking for. It helps some things, but the plant-based diet didn't fully reverse it. Like you read about other stories, and this is a really common thing that I see patients. So like, yeah, well, I read about everyone else and I followed all the gurus and it didn't completely go away or got a little better and now I'm struggling to maintain or whatever. This is a really, really common story. I think that I'd like to highlight people is that just because you read when it's not, oh, this is the next thing, right? There was so much more to your story. Can you walk a little bit through what was the next phase of your healing? So you're moving into this anti-inflammatory whole food plant-based diet, seeing some improvement, but you're like, what is your emotional and this inner dealing with, right? You're dealing with inflammation, you're dealing with the depression, you're thinking you're doing right, you just have to do something. But what does that mean for you? Like what's going on in your head and your heart there?
Well, it was mixed. So I would fluctuate between feeling so hopeful and optimistic and believing so much and just being so proud of myself because I never thought I could have eaten this way or lived this way, right? I was so much more spontaneous person just out there living versus now I got a plan, now I got to prepare. Now I never had to do that before, right? So I was so proud of myself and I was like, I know it's going to work. So I felt so hopeful, and then I would go to see the doctors and the labs weren't great or something. And then I was so like, boom, I would crash so hard and be like, what am I doing wrong? It must have been because that one time that I didn't eat, I ate too late. It was like such a minor thing that I had done, like looking back at it, like, of course it wasn't that. But in my head, I was like, it must have been that. I must not have been as diligent as I thought, or there's something yeah. So I would try to find a reason that it was my fault of what I had done wrong. And so looking back at that, I do not feel that way anymore at all. But so I was like up and down. And then I would get a new plan, I'd come up with a new plan for myself. And then I'd be like, boom, back on a high, like this is the new plan. My poor husband, I was like, now we're doing this, now we're doing this. And it'd be something new. It's like, we have to do it only this way. And he'd be like, all right, like we got a whole house water filter, and now we're like, it was always something that was like the thing that I had to do. I wasn't getting better. And so I would get hope again. So it was an emotional roller coaster for me for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you are having this emotional roller coaster, and was there ever a point that you observed yourself like, I can't keep going up and down, up and down? Like, how did you learn to transition, how to deal
Yeah.
with it? Because I think this is a really common experience, regardless of what someone's dealing with, right? It could be anything outside of health as well, right? Like relationships, your finances, all sorts of things could be causing this type of thing. So when was that point you're like, man, okay, first I was on the ER roller coaster, having fun, going out. Now I'm on this internal emotional roller
That's
coaster.
right.
Next shiny object, that's going to be the ticket. When did you, because you tried so many different things, like what happened till you finally
Yeah.
step back?
And it's funny, I kept getting stricter. I was like, okay,
Oh,
all
interesting.
raw foods, right? Raw only, smoothies, salads, nothing else. And so I did that for 5 months, but I felt terrible after that. It was rough. And then I did water fast, go to True North and water fast. People get better. Autoimmune heals all the time. And when I got there, like, oh, we just had someone just like you with lupus and they reversed. And I was so hopeful again. And I did not do well. My kidneys kind of took a hit. That was a rough time. So that wasn't great for me either. And so I just kept trying and trying and trying what everybody told me would work. And so it was a point where I just had to, exactly like what you said, I just got quiet and was like, okay, this isn't working. So what else can I do? And so that's when I signed up for the other modalities to train in. So I signed up for integrative medicine. I did the integrative medicine fellowship with Dr. Andrew Weil in Arizona. And I did functional medicine in 2 years, and I got certified in functional medicine. So getting to the root cause, using other modalities besides just food. And that's when I started getting a much more holistic picture and realizing that we're so unique. And I have a different microbiome from that person who healed that way. And I have different genetics from that person who got better there. And I have different so many things. And so the journey kind of, again, this stuff becomes fun for me in a way, because I was like, oh my gosh, look, this is what I have. Well, that's clearly not going to work for it. So I got to do this way, or, I got to bring in this supplement, or I shouldn't be eating that all the time because I don't process that well. And it became like this game for me, almost like a puzzle or a challenge. Like, all right, I'm going to figure myself out. There's a reason my body's not healing, because that's not right. And I had to do a more holistic. So I did a lot of spiritual work, a lot of days in the desert. I don't live too far from like the deserts of Utah. And so I went out there quite a bit and had my quiet time and a lot of journaling and figuring myself out. And then I thought the answer isn't going to come from someone else. The answer is inside of me. And so I just got to find this. And so that's when it became, things actually started getting better. And I started getting good results for the first time, and things started looking better, and I started making changes. And it might not have been what other people had told me, but I started improving. And so I continued to improve. And now I feel like I have no joint pains at all. And I actually feel like I have good energy. So I'm not perfect. There are days if I don't sleep, if I don't take care of myself, I do need to I do need to eat well, and I do need to take care of myself. But um, when I do, I can feel amazing, like really great.
So I want to go to Chris in the desert and talk to Chris there. And when you said you did the spiritual work and you had to learn from within, what was that message that did you have an aha? Was there something that when Chris was in a quiet place that really finally is like, okay, this is what it is? Or was it a process? Like what was that about for you?
Well, it was probably a process, but there were some moments. And the story is people go to the desert with their lowest point. Like going to the desert is like considered is like a saying when people are in the desert, and then they come out a new person because you're there when it's just the roughest. And I was aware of that. So I was like, I don't feel like I'm at my lowest place, but I'm pretty low. So I'm gonna go to the desert. And it's just something about the openness and the peace, and you just feel like you can feel like this energy of a bigger something coming into you. And so for me, that's what it was. And I think I was just present in the moment. And it was just, I always try to think like we're all connected. We all have this energy from the universe, from God, from whatever. And sometimes I can feel that, like when I'm in the mountains of Aspen and I'm hiking, I can feel that me and the trees are connected, me and the rocks. We're all part of this. And I feel like a bigger. And so when I was in the desert, I felt that like I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm whole. Like we're all connected. Like this is just in my head. Not that it's in my head, but the fact that I'm like this broken being that, I'm just making up a story in my mind. And so like, and so I just started feeling like, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and all my labs are gonna be perfect because I think I'm whole, but that didn't happen. But it came to this point where I just started realizing that I'm not broken and stopped thinking of myself that way. And all these people give you a diagnosis, this is who you are, and that's not who I am. And so I was like, shake that off. I don't live in this with a shield on my body where I can't do anything. I'm not that person at all. Like I'm Chris, part of this bigger universe, and I'm fine just as I am. And so when that came to be me, And I kept going down my own path after that with as far as my health, what I do. My integrative plan is so much more than just my diet now. And I love it. And so now I'm just in a much better place thanks to the time in the desert.
I think this is beautiful because it speaks to you shifted from thinking there was something that was broken to understanding that you were already whole and you're on now the right path, right? Because you're so true, right? The mental constructs, the stories that we tell ourselves almost could blind you to the opportunities of really your true potential and healing. And so I think that's absolutely beautiful. And it's exactly the same thing I've come to any conclusion is that we are all part of a universal, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, universal mind, whatever. And that spirit dwells within all of us. We are all connected. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. But you have to, I think the beautiful thing about being in the desert or the mountains, you feel expansive, right? When you understand your part is just one tiny part amongst this expansive universe and how what a wonderful miracle that is. And it's doesn't mean to diminish who you are, but it just makes you how more special you are. And so I think that's fabulous. So now you've gone through this journey of just living life, going like all out, and you had this huge shift that really punished you in a way that's physical, spiritual. You had to climb out. I remember conversations, the question like, Lori, why am I not getting better? And I remember you asking that and that pain that you could hear, right? And so I think that's such an important driver with if people are asking that type of question to keep thinking, go into the deeper self because that's where you're going to find your answers. And it's funny that that's when you started seeing yourself getting better, when you release the expectations, when you release that attachment to what you thought had to happen. But like the universe is like, Chris, I got so much more for you. I
Mhm.
mean, I think it's a beautiful illustration. So now where you are, you're kind of your new self. How would you define the Dr. Chris Miller now versus the Dr. Chris Miller 15 years ago, 17 years ago?
Well, the Dr. Chris Miller now is a little bit different even from just 5 years ago, because 5 years ago, I was trying to teach people and share my story and share that we can heal, everybody can heal. Um, and I was trying to share different things that work for people. Now, fast forward to where I am today, and I'm transitioning to building my own practice and trying to figure out how, in what special way, unique way can I help people and help myself at the same time. And so now I feel more like I'm the type of person who I want to unite old Chris and new Chris. There's a lot of old Chris that I love. I love the person who was just fun and just got out, wasn't afraid to go play in the mountains. Because there was a phase where I didn't want to do any of that anymore. I wanted to be close to home. I made myself small, and I don't want to be small anymore. My mantra for this year is to live expansive. I want to be me and not be afraid anymore. I want to just live life as large as I can. I have my habits in place, so I'm talking to the perfect person. So I do eat well. I do go to bed on time. I do exercise every day. I do get outside and make sure I have time for mind body work and journal and do my meditation. So I do all of that. That is the new Chris is always going to do that, and I love all those things. They mean a lot to me. They're special to me. But the new Chris is also wants to be with her friends and laughing and be silly and a little more spontaneous and have time to like not be afraid to just do a weekend trip with friends or just go last minute without planning. I don't want to plan every second. So I have to have ways to get quick, healthy food. But just so the new Chris is kind of a little bit of both. And as far as work, I love the idea of working with people and sharing that we're not all the same. So we have to understand you and what is it in a holistic approach. Because for me, just eating certain foods didn't do it the way it did for other people. And that's great. It does work for some people. I see it even in my own patients. But for me, the food was just one little piece of it, right? There is so much more layers to me that I had to uncover, and I had to do that myself. So having time and space, I was so blessed that I had that time and space to do that. So
Mm.
now I like to work with people to learn more about them, maybe learning. more advanced testing or genetic testing or microbiome testing or some of the advanced labs if we need to, or looking at people holistically, like what else is going on, or how do you see yourself, or this all this, or so that's the new Chris, helping people and being a little more spontaneous too.
So your magic potion, your elixir that you brought back to us would be if you had to put it in a couple of sentences. I mean, you kind of, I think, pointed to it, but what would be that core offer that you have back? You're like, I went on this magical journey, which we've discussed, but now I have this. And um, what would you say? And if someone can walk away and it's like, wow, that Dr. Chris Miller, she does this. What would you say that is?
Well, I would say look inside of yourself to heal. Um, Figure out what's really going on and let go of the guards or the shields that you put on yourself, the braces of as far as who you are, and break free of them, break free. And so building habits is super important. I will say that. So, I've established certain ways that I just am now. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think of them as habits anymore. It just is who I am. Um,
Mm.
and so that is important for people. So my magic elixir, I would say, is let go of these guards. I mean, I think for me, that's it. I held on to it as if this was who I am. And when I broke free of that, it really helped. And then don't always blame yourself. Go deeper. There may be a reason. There may be something that we can pick up, or you can pick up from more advanced testing if needed, to figure out what really is going on. And don't ever give up hope, because if you're
Mm.
not getting better, that just means it's not working. So that means you just have to. I always my joke is like from Friends when they were carrying that couch and they're like, pivot, pivot. So when it's not working, I'm always like, pivot, I'm pivoting. So my husband's like, "Oh, great, where are we pivoting now?" I'm like, "Nope, nope." So if you're not getting better, just pivot. There's something that is just not working for you, and just figure that. You just got to figure that out.
Right, right. I love that because sometimes I'll have patients who refuse to step on a scale or they don't want to look at their blood sugars. They're just like, I just can't because they have some emotional response. And it's like you have to reframe how we're responding to the data in our lives. So I love it how you said pivot. You're pivoting here, you've let go. So now that you are where you are currently in your life, what is a moment of pure joy in your new life that you never imagined was possible before?
Pure joy for me these days is waking up not having any pain. It's a blessing beyond blessing every single day, because for years that didn't happen. So that's pure joy, and pure joy is being out in the mountains for sure, because I gave that up for a while. That's the second pure joy. And I have one more pure joy. Pure joy number three is getting to work with people and seeing people take back their health. Like there is nothing more. I just want to cry with people when I see someone improving their health. Like, and you know this too, you work with people, but I mean, I've seen someone go through so much and then get better is like so special. It's just so joyful for me. So those are my three joyful moments.
I think that's fabulous. And do you have any in particular stories with patients that you would like to share that kind of pulls together your kind of new framework of how you approach patients and yourself?
I do actually. I have a woman who she's probably upper 40s, maybe 48 or 49. And she came to me with rheumatoid arthritis, and she couldn't move the whole right side of her body. Like she was so stiff, she just couldn't move it. And she was on these medications, they weren't working great, and her doctor wanted to put her on something stronger. She was a little bit afraid, so she came to see me. And so we did our assessment, holistic assessment, everything about her. And, there were some diet issues that we cleaned up and put her on a very anti-inflammatory healing plan for her that worked for her in her life. And but she definitely had some emotional issues with her husband and stressors, and so she wasn't taking any time to herself. So we talked about the importance of that, and she was really identifying with her disease, kind of like
Mm.
I was, like I guess a lot like other people do too, but I definitely was doing that. And so I we talked about that and about breaking free of that. Like that's not who you are at all. And so but then also she ended up having celiac, so she had some pretty bad, and we tested for her because having some bloating. And so we did some genetic testing on her, and she did have celiac, at least by the genes and by the antibodies, positive antibodies. And so we took her off gluten, and we did a little more in depth, and we had to supplement a few different things. So we kind of did things like that. But I think for her, the biggest thing was her mind body work. She did the spiritual work as well. And different from me, she did a lot of yoga, which I
Mm,
did yoga too, but hers, that was her big thing. She started going to yoga and going for walks by herself, getting away from her kids and away from her husband. Fast forward, she ended up divorcing her husband because he was just so unkind to her about her, and really making her feel bad about who she was as a person.
mm,
And she had these young kids, so she was getting worse. And so we were working with her, and we did some anti-inflammatory supplements that I threw in there to help her feel better. And she started getting better with the supplements, I think. And then she divorced him and started moving forward, and she actually got better to the point she could move the whole right side of her body. She didn't have to go on any more aggressive medications. She actually stopped her medications.
mm,
So she didn't stop them, but we slowly tapered her off them. She
mm.
was on two other medications. We tapered slowly off them, watching her labs, making sure her inflammation was low. And she's not on anything now. And I still talk to her about once every 3, 4 months. She checks in with me. So she's doing amazing.
I think that's a beautiful representation of exactly your journey, right? You just help someone break from the identity of the disease so that when it doesn't get better immediately, but you got to the root cause, right? So regardless of what that is, heart disease, your bone health, your autoimmune disease, like, because you work with all sorts of people, not just autoimmune disease. So, someone who's dealing with the inflammation piece, that greater umbrella, but also understanding you're a human in a being and helping her realize the being part, not just the
Yeah,
human, right?
right.
So, that's a beautiful piece. I
Yeah.
love it. All right. So, Chris, this is fantastic. Thank you. Where can people find you?
Well, you can't find me quite yet, but
What?
you will be able to find me very soon. I'm in the process of building a website and my new business, and it will be chrismillermd.com. So there will be a page up saying coming soon, so you'll be able to find me very soon. chrismillermd.com.
Awesome. Can they opt in? Is there any way to opt in so you can reach out to them when you do open up?
There's a newsletter, and I will be seeing patients by telehealth in the states that I'm certified in. So you'll have to look and see. But yes, I would love to. So come find me if you're interested.
Awesome. Chris Miller, MD. And you have your YouTube page that you're just getting started too. So I had to highlight everyone to come and subscribe as well. And that's also
That's Dr. Chris Miller.
Dr. Chris Miller. It is. Awesome. Thank you, Chris, for being here and sharing your story. That was wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. Happy to share.
Thanks for tuning in to the Habit Healers podcast. Remember, being a habit healer isn't about perfection. It's about choosing healing one habit at a time. So if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to download the Habit Healer Manifesto. It is your daily reminder of the identity you're stepping into. So grab it now at the link below or head on over to drmarbus.com and be happy to join our newsletter and so many wonderful resources. And remember, you are always one healing habit away. I'll see you next time.